Audio on demand from Vision Christian Media.
You're listening to Momentum, a show that helps men succeed in life. And as we delve into this week's topic, a reminder that some of the content may be of a sensitive nature. Now, here's your hosts, Tim and Des.
Okay, well, welcome to this week's Momentum. It is so good to be here and so good to have you tuning in wherever you might be, whether that's around Australia or around the world via the podcast, which is awesome. And look, we're here for you. So thanks for tuning in and hanging around with us. And we're very excited about this week's show. But before we go anywhere, Des, how are you this week, my friend? Are you good?
I'm really good, really good. You know, for a bloke who's pushing 80, I'm doing pretty well. No, they're really good. Yeah, it's such a joy to be able to do Momentum. Momentum is such a gift to men. There's not a week goes past that we don't get, men from all over Australia. It could be Tasmania, it could be ACT, it can be Darwin, wherever, who reach out and say, hey, guys, I love what you do. Thank you for what you do. And so it's really great. It's so much of a blessing. It's great. Yeah.
Actually, just bouncing off the back of that, Des, and we haven't had this conversation, but I spoke to somebody that you and I mutually know in Sydney yesterday.
Oh.
And hadn't spoken for a while, and he happened to say, I was listening to the show in the car the other day. Man, there was some really good stuff on there.
Is that good? That's great.
I said, you sound surprised.
Like we are.
Sometimes. But look, the idea is that, we either Des and I, from our own experience, stuff that we've often learned the hard way, can give you some tips and advice, or by the people that we interview, just help men do life a little bit better. And we're here to support you on your journey, because we know that, there's times in our life that are pretty tough. And in those times, you need support. And then when times are good, you can be a support to other people. And that's certainly what we encourage here at Momentum. There's a well-known quote from Mark Twain that says, the two most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why. And while we can probably all agree that having a clearly defined purpose in our lives is important, even essential to living a fulfilling life, many of us struggle to find what we might describe as our God-given purpose.
And it's an interesting subject. Does everybody have a God-given purpose waiting to be discovered, or is it only a select few who really get to find out their true calling? To explore this in detail, we're joined by leadership coach and continuous improvement professional, Bobby Aitkens. Welcome back to Momentum.
Hello, how are you?
We're really good.
Good.
You're excited to be here, Bobby. Just contain that enthusiasm.
No. I suddenly realized that I had muted my microphone and I was trying to find the unmute button quickly.
Well, look, you could have gone like 30 seconds into it and we're waving at you and flapping, but look, hey, that was a bit more subtle. Bobby, interesting, because, you've been on the show before, and I don't know that we ever really we spanned a bit of your testimony, but just for people listening who you might be a new name for them. Interesting that you actually have a business called Momentum Improvement. And just to clarify, we didn't collaborate on any of our joint names here, but tell us a bit about what you do at the moment, Bobby, because I know you do coaching and business improvement. What does that actually mean in real terms?
So Momentum Improvement Partners is a company I set up back in 2017. And effectively, it was about I've got 20 plus years in business organizational improvement. It gets labeled business transformation, organizational transformation, all of these different things. And I take my experience. I've been doing that across Southeast Asia, Europe, using some of most widely recognized techniques, Lean, Six Sigma, some of these things to analyze change management, but project management, all of these different bits and pieces in various forms, everything from small to medium enterprises right through to large multinationals, and just applying my skills to help people look at what's going on in their organizations. And I say that because God's actually helped me pivot to using this with ministries and everything else as well. But using that skill to help navigate people to look at what's going on in their organizations, to see clearly some of the problems they're facing, and work with them to come up with the solutions so that they can move on into a place where they can build or maintain the momentum that they've got in the organization.
That obviously on a surface level, you're looking at organizational stuff, but when we, and bear with me because I'm going somewhere with this, but obviously that then would boil down to an individual piece, because we all then make up that bigger picture. And so what I'm doing is tying that into then what we're talking about this week, which, I mean, aside from the fact that you may work in organizations that aren't Christian, that sort of thing. But when we come back to being a Christian and going, okay, well, I am part of a bigger picture, but some of us, and most of us, I think, would certainly ascribe to God has something individual for me with my life that is partly my responsibility then to discover, find, excavate, step into as I go through my life. I mean, let's use that as a starting point. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, look, absolutely. One of the things that I've done, and as I started out in IT, as far away from dealing with real people as you kind of imagine.
Is that an intentional move?
Well, look, it wasn't really an intention. It was just that my brain works well with logic and things like that. And it was an easy move when I was younger and really didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. So I studied business computing because I thought, well, from here on out, we're always going to have computers. We're always going to have business of some description. If I've got some education in that, I'll at least have something that I can apply because I'm useless with my hands. So there was no point in me getting a trade, right? So that was what I did, and that kind of grew into this place. But you're right. The more I moved into how do we work with processes? How do we work with that? And these were all about these tools are all just there to help people do stuff. And I think we sometimes get that a little bit confused because you're right. Organizations are just groups of people that come together for a common purpose. Sometimes it's the organization is set up first. Typically, an organization is set up by a person because they have a purpose that they want it to fulfill. In my experience, a lot of organizations lose sight of that purpose on their journey and they just get dragged into making money or whatever else, which is okay. But making money just for the sake of making money is pointless. Yeah, it's kind of unfulfilling. But the people I meet with, and that's where I ended up going, and you talk about the extreme, starting in IT, I've done stats and everything, but I actually went and did a master's in applied coaching, which is all about dealing with people. And you can't improve or transform any organization unless you can achieve a level of transformation in and with the people in the organization.
Yeah. I mean, let's go back to bringing that down then, because what we want to do, I suppose, out of today's show is bring your knowledge of coaching and dealing with people in a pleasant way. Maybe that's not the right phrase to use, but having worked with people over so many years. Actually, it was Dean Grazioso I was listening to on a podcast the other day, and he said the worst thing is when people are successful but unfulfilled. And I thought, oh, that's an interesting distinction because we often think that if you're successful, then you must be fulfilled. And he was saying, no, people can be successful, but they get to this point where they've had the financial success, the business success, whatever it may be. But there's a huge gap inside of them because they haven't actually been fulfilled. And so let's start unpacking that and assume that most people on this call are probably going to be Christian. Let's start there because we know that there'll be people that perhaps aren't, but then finding like a God-given calling or a life purpose to go, it may not look super flashy and whatever, but I'm living a fulfilled life for me and something that I suppose is in alignment with my giftings. If I do believe in God, why he created me, what this thing is that he's got me to do. How do we even start that journey, Bobby?
Look, the first thing I think is you've really got to challenge how are they defining success? And this is one of the reasons that I go back to, we talked about purpose. When I deal with organizations, one of the first questions I ask them is, and it's not to get fluffy, but it's to help them actually focus. What is their vision? What is the purpose for the organization they're operating in? Does their purpose align with the organization that they're working in? In organizations, we're really good at developing KPIs and KRAs and measuring things. And hopefully, if these have been set up right, they're aligned with measuring, are we progressing towards the purpose the organization set out for? But people don't tend to do that with their own lives. And so we do all this for businesses, for organizations. We build mission statements. We do all that. And it's becoming more and more popular that people are going, I need to write a vision statement for my life. I need to figure out what's the mission statement. What are my values in how I'm going to engage and go forth and do stuff? And how are you going to measure progress in some way to say, am I actually moving towards my purpose or not? Because frequently, and this happens very strongly in Christian circles, we use the world's definition of what it means to be successful to define whether or not we're doing well in life. And the Bible that I read, the definitions of what success looked like for many of the people that we read about in the Bible would not be deemed successful according to the ways and the kind of definitions of success in the world.
That's so true, Bobby. I mean, I just use my life as an example. I mean, successful in business, successful in the corporate world, but really no idea about a God-given purpose or a mission or whatever. Totally disconnected. And I think lots of men, Christian or not Christian, fall into that same camp.
So, Bobby, I suppose for people listening, right? How do we start exploring? Again, we're all going to be on the journey, disclaimer, right? Let's just start there. There's going to be people who are listening who are young, trying to figure this out from day dot. There's going to be people our age, and by that, Des, you're in a different camp, right?
Oh, thanks.
With respect. But I'm looking at Bobby and I who are kind of like midlife, and then we're going, oh, I've done this thing for 25 years, and now suddenly I'm turning 50 and I'm reevaluating a whole lot and go, actually, I think that might have changed for the next part of my life. And then Des, you're in a different season, right? I mean, it's like you've had different seasons and you're in a kind of semi-retired space as well. So, I mean, for all of us, I suppose it is transitional to some degree in what stage in life we're in. But if we want to come back to some basics, Bobby, when we're sitting about this and going, am I actually in the spot that I feel like I'm made for, gifted for, want to be in, that's making me feel like I'm fulfilled in life? Are there some simple things that we can sit down and just take some time and kind of chew through to kind of unpack that a bit?
So I'm not one for this whole contemplating my navel type approach to the world, but there is a reality that each and every one of us is fearfully and wonderfully made, according to Scripture, that God knew us and knit us together in our mother's wombs, and that we were actually created with a specific intent in mind. And each of every one of us is different. Okay, so we talk about age. When you were born was when you were supposed to be born. Because there's things about when you're born that are important for the influence that God wants you to have, or the things that God may want you to do. The family that you're born into. I know that not everybody has a great experience of that, but there aren't mistakes in that, because there's opportunity for what God wants to use and do through some of these things. Again, with our giftings, we all have gifts and talents. Yeah, I think John Maxwell used to say it best. He says, everybody you ever meet will be 10 out of 10. Your job is to find out what in.
Oh, that's good.
So we're all really good, and it doesn't matter who you meet. However good at something you are, somebody else will come along and beat you at something else. Nobody is the best at everything. Our only real kind of job, if you like to use that, is to find out and learn to be comfortable in being who we are, instead of trying to become something else because the world's or the other people around us are trying to tell us that that's what we should be, rather than who God made us to be.
Let's take a short break because we're halfway through the show. Bobby, I want to come back and open up with a question about something that's behind you in your room, and then we'll come back and explore that in just a tick on the other side of Momentum. We're chatting with Bobby Aitkens on this week's show about our God-given purpose. We're going to take a short break. And while we do that, go and have a look around our website, momentumaustralia.org. You'll find a bit more about us there. Of course, you can get the care line number there too, 1-800-000-636, and the link to the YouTube channel as well. Do that after the show. We're going to come back with part 2 with Bobby Aitkens on this week's Momentum in just a moment.
This is Momentum, a show that helps men succeed in life. Find out more at momentumaustralia.org.
If this program has highlighted something you'd like prayer for, we'd love to pray for you. Call 1-800-PRAY-FOR-ME. That's 1-800-772-936. It's a free call. Or text 0401 132 888.
You're listening to Momentum, a show that helps men succeed in life. Find out more at momentumaustralia.org.
Okay, welcome back to part 2 of this week's show. It is Tim and Des with you for this week's Momentum. We're joined by Bobby Aitkens. who we've classed as a leadership coach and continuous improvement professional. That's the first time, Bobby, that I've ever heard of that term, but I like it. A continuous improvement professional. I think we should all be continuous improvement professionals for our own lives individually.
Or activists, yeah.
That's another story. Look, we're talking about our God-given purpose on the show this week. And Bobby, before we jumped onto the recording, we were just having a bit of a chat, and we picked up that there's a guitar behind you. So let me just kind of unpack that a little bit, because you say that you play bass in your local church, or you did do. And some of us might have these things that we can do, like you, for example, bass. I sing, Des, I think you can hold a tune.
Sort of.
We've got these things that
That's
we
not
can
my
kind
calling.
of do. Right. And this is where I want to go with that, because we've got these things that we can do, and we might even quite enjoy them. But how do we know that they are things that they're just kind of peripherals, they're not meant to be the main thing, right? I mean, Bobby, I don't know if you feel like you're going to be the next bassist for some famous rock band or whatever. But the truth is, a lot of us have these gifts in our life, but they're not necessarily meant to be the main thing. How do we, I suppose, determine the things that are just the gifts and we enjoy them, but they're not necessarily the main thing that we're pursuing in our life?
So I think there's a balance. I mean, as you said, I can play bass, and at one point I played in worship team in local church. And in fact, I learned to play bass because there was a gap in the worship team and they really needed a bass player. So I thought, oh, well, I'll give it a go. I'll see if I can figure it out, because I always wanted to play a musical instrument, but I'd never really been able to do it. And I tried a number of times, but bass seemed to work for me, one string at a time. I can count to 4. I thought I can handle that. Bass playing for me, even now, I will play and I can do bits and pieces, but I enjoy playing and I enjoy worshiping and things, but I know it's not my gifting. I have to work hard at it to even be average, right? Whereas I have met people who will hear a tune being played somewhere, they will walk through, pick up an instrument, and they are playing it 5 minutes later. So I think whilst there's things that we can do, I think the ease with which we do it should be an indicator as to whether it's one of your innate gifts or not. I mean, there's things that we just know we're good at, right? Like I will go, we talked about, I do business improvement. I walk into businesses and situations, and very, very quickly, I can see exactly what's going wrong and what they need to do, what they can do to fix it. And frequently, that's not very difficult. Helping them understand what they need to do to fix it and owning the solution is the more difficult part, right? So I know that what I do is part of my natural gifting. That's just who God's made me to be. And I think one of the interesting things in this, because it was one of the things that took me a long time to really understand, I thought everybody could do what I could do. I thought everybody could see what I was seeing. And it took a while before I realized that actually most people can't do that. And that's when I began to realize, well, actually, that must be my gifting and part of who God's made me to be, because it's not natural. I mean, we talk about some of the musicians that can get up and play, and that is a gifting, right? Because not everybody can do that. You talk about holding a tune. Well, there's a whole load of people that shouldn't even sing in the shower, right? And this is the reality. There are people that just have a natural talent for doing stuff, and you can watch any of your Britain's Got Talent or Australia's Got Talent or any of these shows, and you see people with genuine talents that rock up and do stuff, and other people are sitting going, wow, I couldn't do that. And I think little keys like that, and I know those are really obvious ones, but it comes right down to, there are some people who, when somebody is upset, they have a natural ability to just come alongside them and comfort them and make those people feel just loved, right? There are people who have the gifting of just being able to share the gospel in a way that it pierces through to people's hearts, right? Now, we're all called to share the Great Commission, but we're not all gifted with that ability. And there are certain different things. I mean, the Bible talks about some are gifted with administration, some are gifted, and it talks about different ministries, different callings. These are all different examples of that. And there are a lot of people who try to become something because they think that's the gifting they want to have, rather than actually taking time to go, God, what's the gifting that you've already put in me? And how do I glorify you best by using everything you've given me to the best of my ability? And I've seen that too many times, that people who've got a genuine gift in one area have decided, because, and we talked about how do you measure success, they've decided for whatever reason that gift is not as good as the one that they think they should have. So they're busy trying to do something else rather than actually use the gifting and the talent that they've got, which is amazing, and actually use that to the fullness.
I think that's okay, by the way, because, people who feel they're called to be pastors or ministers or evangelists, I mean, that's right up front. It's very visual. You are in the limelight, and people can see your gifting if you have that. And people strive for that. People want to have that. Whereas, the role of a pastoral care person can influence people much deeper and much easier than some of those, people who have got the limelight.
Well, I think the irony is, it's actually, they'll definitely motivate them more, because you understand that the funny thing is, let's be honest, you'll go and you'll listen to a sermon. Now, if you ask any person to tell them what that sermon was about, by the following week, you'll be lucky if you can find 5% of the people that listen that can actually tell you anything significant that was said in that sermon. Yeah, it's true. We know it. It's fact. It's based on scientific studies, public speaking, and all of these things, which is why they've developed all of these things that they put through public speaking to try and make bits of it memorable. But you touch someone's heart, and they will never forget.
That's so good.
It's the absolute truth. You can shout all you want from the stage. You can speak the best message you've ever heard, and people will forget. But you touch someone's heart, you make them feel genuinely loved, and they'll never forget. And it will be with them for a long time.
Yeah, that's good. Just quickly bouncing off what Des was saying, I think it is then good to check our motive, right, in why we might be pursuing what we're pursuing, because, again, we can get sidetracked. And great example there from both of you guys to go, yeah, you know what, sometimes we want the flashy thing to give us some acknowledgement or make me feel like I'm worth whatever, but it's really filling a void, and we can get sidetracked by that. And that's a really good point to make, to go, what's the motive behind what I'm about to do? I think also, Bobby, let me ask you this, because, it's been really interesting. I've spent 20-odd years now in the radio space and TV space, and was not something I ever wanted. But it's interesting that, and this is my question, now I look back at the last 20-odd years, and I look at the outward expression, I suppose, of my giftings has initially come through radio, a bit of TV with, on the TV stations in Perth. But when I look at that, the common theme was I'm communicating. I'm a communicator. So the radio or the TV was the tool, but I suppose my gift or my calling, I think I've worked out is more that I'm a communicator. I'm someone that is actually good at reaching people. So I suppose then, when people look at their lives, there might be a thread, like for yourself and like for Des with you with IT and stuff like that. It's like there are these common themes of what we do and how we do it, but the expression of it might look a little different throughout our lives. Do you understand what I'm getting at? For people to kind of get their head around that, and when they look back and go, oh, the way that I've done it has changed, but there's a common thread of what I do. Yeah,
look, absolutely. And I think around the time that you and I first met, Tim, we were talking through, and we were doing some coaching and bits and pieces. And one of the things that you said to me back then was, I have a real heart for men's ministry. And that was a long way before Momentum started.
I was going to say, that's probably like 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah, easily. And It's things like that, where we've got something inside of us. So one, you've recognized your gifting is to communicate, right? You've got a gift to communicate. You've got a gift of being able to talk to people in a meaningful way and structure the conversations so that they do have an impact to the people that are listening. But more than that, you also had something that was burning inside you, men's ministry, that was a way that God was stirring for you to apply that gifting. Yeah. And you have to wait for the right time to come along until it's right to step into that season.
It's good. You mentioned John Maxwell there. Of course, Rick Warren's Purpose-Driven Life has been a massive book over the years as well. I encourage you to do that. And of course, get good people in your life too, that you can bounce this stuff off and go, hey, what do you see? Well, is there something that I'm missing in my life that you can see? And Bobby, just, as we wrap up, pointing back, I mean, I remember some of our first chats way back when in a previous life, and how that did certainly start the ball rolling for me about, hey, obviously you could hear the stuff that was coming out of my heart. So it's good to get people around us and go, hey, what do you hear from me on a regular basis that might be indicators of something that I'm not yet stepping into, or I should step into in a greater capacity? Our special guest this week has been Bobby Aitkens, leadership coach, continuous improvement professional. And Bobby, it's been great you speaking into the space of God-given purpose. That's been this week's Momentum. Thanks for your time, mate. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to Momentum, a show that helps men succeed in life. For more information or to hear this week's show again, go to momentumaustralia.org. You can also access a whole range of resources to help you on your journey and to get in touch with the team at momentumaustralia.org. Until next time, keep moving forward with Momentum.